The words hit me like a slap across the face. "Grandma, you're embarrassing me in front of my friends," my granddaughter Beatrice hissed under her breath as I adjusted my worn but clean cardigan at the coffee shop where she worked part-time. Had come to surprise her with lunch, a simple sandwich I'd prepared with love, wrapped in yesterday's newspaper because I couldn't afford fancy bags anymore. At 73, after my Harold passed 5 years ago, every penny counted. But seeing the shame in Beatrice's eyes, the way she glanced nervously at her young colleagues who were snickering behind the counter, something inside my chest cracked. "I'm sorry, dear," I whispered, backing toward the door with my humble offering, still in hand. "I didn't mean to. Just, maybe next time, dress better, and don't bring homemade food here. It looks poor." Poor. The word echoed in my mind as I walked the 6 blocks home to my small apartment, the same one Harold and I had shared for 42 years. Poor. As if love could be measured by the price tag on my clothes or the fanciness of store-bought meals. That night, I sat in Harold's old recliner, staring at the college fund statement I'd been carefully building for Beatrice. $23,000. Every Social Security check, I'd set aside what I could. Every birthday gift of $5 or $10 from distant relatives went straight into that account. I'd eaten beans and rice for weeks, mended the same 3 dresses countless times, and walked everywhere to save bus fare, all so my granddaughter could have the education I never had. My mind drifted back to my childhood in rural Georgia, where I was the youngest of 8 children. My father, Cornelius, worked the cotton fields from sunrise to sunset, his hands permanently stained and calloused. My mother, Dorothea, took in laundry from the wealthy families in town, her fingers raw from lye soap and endless scrubbing. "Education is the one thing they can't take from you, Mildred," Mama used to say as she hung sheets on the line. "Promise me you'll get yourself some learning." But learning was a luxury we couldn't afford. When I turned 14, I had to leave school to help support the family. I cleaned houses, minded children, and later worked in the textile mill where I met Harold. He was a kind man, a mechanic with gentle hands and a warm smile, who never once made me feel ashamed of my lack of formal education. Together, we built a simple but happy life. Harold worked double shifts to put our son Thomas through college. Thomas became a successful engineer, married a lovely woman named Patricia, and they gave us Beatrice, our pride and joy. When Thomas and Patricia died in that car accident 8 years ago, Harold and I didn't hesitate to take in 15-year-old Beatrice. She became our everything. Harold's illness came suddenly, cancer that moved through his body like wildfire. The medical bills consumed our savings, our retirement fund, everything we'd worked for. After his funeral, I was left with nothing but this apartment, a small Social Security check, and an overwhelming love for the granddaughter who now seemed ashamed of me. The morning after the coffee shop incident, I called Beatrice. She was in her sophomore year at the local college, studying business administration. My smart, beautiful girl who I thought would understand the sacrifices behind her education. "Beatrice, honey, we need to talk." "Oh, Grandma, about yesterday. I was just stressed about work. You know how it is." "I need you to come over this evening. It's important." When she arrived, she barely looked at me, checking her phone constantly. She wore expensive jeans and a designer sweater I knew cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Sit down, dear," I said, patting the sofa beside me. "Can we make this quick? I'm meeting friends for dinner at that new Italian place downtown." I handed her the college fund statement. Her eyes widened as she saw the balance. "What's this?" "It's your college fund. I've been saving every penny I could since you were 16. $23,000. Her face lit up for the first time in months. "Grandma, this is amazing. I can finally transfer to that private university I wanted. The one with the better business program. I can get a car loan too, maybe even move into a nicer apartment. Beatrice. My voice was quiet but firm. I'm giving this money to charity. Color drained from her face. What? You can't be serious. I'm donating it to the Salvation Army Scholarship Fund. They help children from poor families, truly poor families, get an education. Grandma, you can't do this to me. That's my money. I'm your granddaughter. And I'm your grandmother, I said, standing up slowly. The woman who raised you after your parents died. The woman who worked 2 jobs when your grandfather got sick. The woman who has loved you unconditionally for 23 years. Tears streamed down her face, but they seemed more about the money than understanding. This is because of yesterday, isn't it? Because I was embarrassed? Grandma, everyone gets embarrassed by their family sometimes. No, Beatrice. This is because I realized I failed you in a much deeper way than I ever imagined. I walked to my bedroom and returned with a wooden box, Harold's memory box. Inside were photographs, letters, and documents from our life together. Sit down. Let me tell you about being truly poor. I showed her a photograph of my childhood home, a sharecropper's shack with newspaper covering the windows where glass should have been. This is where I grew up, 8 children, 1 room for sleeping. We wore flour sacks for underwear and shoes with holes we covered with cardboard. Her crying had stopped. She was listening now. This, I held up another photo, is your grandfather when we met. He was 22 and had never owned a new piece of clothing in his life, but he was the kindest, most dignified man I ever knew. He never once made me feel small for my lack of education. I showed her pictures of Harold working on cars, covered in grease but smiling. Pictures of us in our tiny first apartment, sitting on milk crates because we couldn't afford furniture. Pictures of your father as a baby, wearing hand-me-down clothes, but surrounded by so much love. We were poor, Beatrice, truly poor. But we were never embarrassing because we understood something you don't. Dignity isn't about what you wear or what you own. It's about how you treat people. It's about gratitude. It's about recognizing sacrifice. I pulled out Harold's last letter to me, written just days before he died. My voice shook as I read aloud. My dearest Mildred, if anything happens to me, don't you dare apologize for who you are or where you came from. You are the strongest, most loving woman I've ever known. Make sure Beatrice understands that real wealth isn't in bank accounts. It's in character. Love her, but don't let her lose sight of what matters. Beatrice was sobbing now, really sobbing. Grandma, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean... Let me finish, dear. I sat beside her and took her hands. Yesterday, when you called me embarrassing, when you were ashamed of my simple clothes and homemade food, you broke something in my heart. But more importantly, you showed me that I had given you everything except the most important lesson of all. I told her about Mrs. Eleanor Richardson, an elderly woman I'd met at the community center. Eleanor had been a professor before retiring, but now volunteered teaching literacy to adults who never had the chance to learn. Her own granddaughter, she confided, was a doctor who rarely visited because she was too busy with important people. Eleanor told me something that stayed with me, I continued. She said, Mildred, sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is to let them face the consequences of their choices. Love doesn't mean rescuing them from learning hard lessons. But Grandma, I need that money for school. I'll fail without it. No, you won't. You'll find a way, just like millions of others do. You'll apply for scholarships, work part-time jobs, maybe take longer to graduate. And in the process, you'll learn the value of hard work and sacrifice. I stood up and walked to my small desk, pulling out a letter I'd already written. I've already contacted the Salvation Army. The donation will be made in Harold's name. But Beatrice, I turned to face her. This isn't punishment. This is love. The hardest kind of love. The kind that says, I believe you're better than this. Over. The next few weeks, Beatrice went through stages of grief over the lost money. First anger. She didn't speak to me for 10 days. Then bargaining. She called crying, promising to be better if I'd change my mind. Then depression. She moped around, telling everyone who would listen about her cruel grandmother. But I held firm. Every time doubt crept in, I remembered Harold's words and the shame in my granddaughter's eyes that day at the coffee shop. The breakthrough came 6 weeks later. Beatrice appeared at my door on a Saturday morning, but she looked different. Her expensive clothes were replaced by simple jeans and a thrift store sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail instead of the elaborate styles she'd been wearing. "Grandma, can I come in?" I opened the door wider. She sat on the same sofa where we'd had our difficult conversation. "I got a job," she said quietly. 2 jobs, actually. I'm working at the campus library and cleaning offices at night. And I applied for 3 scholarships. That's wonderful, dear. I went to see the people at the Salvation Army, to see where the money went. My heart began to race. And? They introduced me to some of the kids who received scholarships. There's a boy named Marcus whose mother works 3 jobs to support 4 children, and a girl named Sarah who aged out of foster care and had nowhere to go. They're both studying to be teachers. Tears were flowing down her cheeks again, but these were different tears. "Grandma, I met Sarah for coffee last week. She told me about growing up in foster homes, about never having anyone believe in her. When she got that scholarship, the one funded partly by your donation, she said it was the first time anyone had ever invested in her future." I reached over and took her hand. "I realized something," Beatrice continued. "I was so focused on what I thought I deserved that I forgot to be grateful for what I already had. I had you. I had Grandpa Harold's love. I had parents who loved me for 16 years. I had a roof over my head and food on the table, and someone who believed in me, enough to save every penny for my education. And now? Now I understand what you were trying to teach me. I was embarrassed by the wrong things. I should have been embarrassed by my selfishness, my ingratitude, my cruelty to the woman who sacrificed everything for me." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment before she spoke again. "I want to earn my education, Grandma, the way you and Grandpa Harold earned everything you had, with hard work and dignity. What about your friends, the ones who thought I was embarrassing?" She smiled for the first time in weeks. "I found better friends. People who understand that character matters more than clothes. Sarah introduced me to a whole group of students who are working their way through school. They're the most inspiring people I've ever met." 3 months later, Beatrice graduated with honors. She'd made Dean's List both semesters after starting her jobs, proving to herself that she could achieve anything through hard work. At her graduation ceremony, she asked me to stand with her for photos. "I want everyone to see my grandmother," she announced proudly. "The strongest woman I know." I wore the same cardigan from that day at the coffee shop, but now it felt like armor instead of shame. A year after graduation, Beatrice started her own small business, a consulting service, helping low-income students navigate college applications and scholarship opportunities. She partners with the Salvation Army, and every client who successfully enters college receives a small celebration package that includes a homemade meal, lovingly wrapped. "I learned that from the best," she tells people when they ask about the personal touch. Last week, she brought her new boyfriend to meet me. His name is David, and he's a social worker from a family much like the one I grew up in. When Beatrice introduced us, she said, "David, this is my grandmother Mildred. She's the woman who taught me that real wealth has nothing to do with money." As I write this story, sitting in Harold's old chair, I think about the lessons life teaches us. Sometimes love means giving everything we have to someone. Sometimes it means taking everything away so they can find their own strength. The donation to the Salvation Army has helped 12 students so far attend college. Each one sends me a card at Christmas, sharing their progress and dreams. Marcus is now a high school math teacher. Sarah graduated with her teaching degree last spring and works with at-risk children. But the greatest gift wasn't the education those young people received. It was watching my granddaughter transform from someone who was embarrassed by love into someone who understands its true value. Yesterday, Beatrice stopped by with groceries. Not because I needed them, but because she wanted to cook dinner together. As we prepared Harold's favorite pot roast, she said, "Grandma, I want to tell you something." "What's that, dear?" "I'm proud to be your granddaughter. Proud of where we came from. Proud of the sacrifices you and Grandpa made. And I hope someday I can be half the woman you are." The words hit me like a gentle embrace across the heart. I thought about that day in the coffee shop, about the shame in her eyes, about the choice I made to love her enough to let her struggle. "You already are Beatrice," I told her. "You already are." Some people might say I was cruel to give away that money. Others might argue that family should always come first. But I know Harold would be proud of the choice I made. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone isn't what they want. It's what they need to become who they're meant to be. And sometimes, the most embarrassing thing isn't wearing an old cardigan or bringing homemade food to a fancy coffee shop. Sometimes the most embarrassing thing is taking for granted the people who love us most. Beatrice learned that lesson. And in teaching it to her, I learned something too. That dignity isn't something that can be taken from you by poverty or age or simple clothes. Dignity is something you carry inside. Something that shines brightest when you choose love over pride, sacrifice over selfishness, and growth over comfort. Today, as I sit in this same apartment where Harold and I built our life together, I'm not embarrassed by anything. Not by my humble surroundings. Not by my simple clothes. Not by the choices I've made. I'm proud of the love I've given, the lessons I've taught, and the woman my granddaughter has become. And that, I believe, is the greatest wealth of all.